books that I wrote, the premise is that we ourselves plan our lives before we were born. And what I did in the 2 books is that I worked with several very gifted mediums and channels who in one way or another could find out what someone had planned before they were born. We actually go into people's pre-birth planning sessions and hear the conversations they had with their future parents, future children, spouses, friends, enemies, if they were planning to have enemies. And I put all of these conversations verbatim into the books. What we see in the pre-birth planning sessions is souls planning challenges, very difficult but common life challenges for purposes of spiritual growth. And the 2 books are organized by type of life challenge. It's everything you can think of: death of a loved one, accidents, drug addiction, alcoholism, financial difficulties, relationship difficulties. And in the books I present all of the information channeled by Spirit as to why anyone would plan any of these difficult experiences. For example, one of the stories in the accidents chapter in El Plan de Tu Alma is a woman who is in a very traumatic bomb explosion, and her body is very badly burned from head to toe by flames from a bomb. She goes into the hospital, she's there for almost 2 years, has 10 different surgeries. And at one point during this period, when she was in a lot of pain, she heard a voice inside her head. It was one of her spirit guides talking to her, and he said to her, "You planned this." And of course she asked why. And the guide explained it. He said, "You wanted to have a lifetime as a gifted healer, and you knew before you were born that if you could heal yourself from this bomb explosion, you could take all of that wisdom about healing and turn it outward in service to others." So the books present the explanations like that as to why somebody would plan these difficult experiences. The idea that anybody would plan trauma before they were born is an idea that on the surface it's hard to grasp intellectually. And this is why I always encourage people, go into your heart. The heart has a higher wisdom, a higher way of knowing. So your mind can be saying, this couldn't possibly be true, but in your heart you feel truth, you sense it. You just know that there is something here that resonates intuitively with you. Trust those intuitions, because that is a much higher form of knowing than logic. I think it's difficult for the average person to understand who they really are. And what I mean is this. I think we live in a time period in which the average person is very much, and sometimes totally, identified with the body, with the personality, with thoughts, with feelings. The average person believes that's who they are. But the body, the personality, thoughts and feelings, these are things you have, things you carry through a lifetime. I often say, if you have a horse, it doesn't mean that you are a horse, you just have the horse. Same thing with the body, personality, and thoughts and feelings. You have them, but you're not them. So who are you? Well, you are a sacred being and an eternal being. The eternal soul who planned your life and your biggest challenges before you were born. Well, one thing would of course be to read the books and understand why other people planned challenges similar to your own. But I am a hypnotherapist, and I offer a specific form of hypnosis known as a between lives regression. In a between lives regression, you can find out about your life plan. It's similar to a past life regression in that you go briefly into a past life, but then you keep going. Part of your consciousness actually goes back to the other side, where you meet with what is called the Council of Elders. These are the very wise, loving, and highly evolved beings who oversee reincarnation on Earth. They know everything about you, including what you planned and why. So if you get in front of the council, this is potentially a life-changing experience because they can answer literally any question you have. I think the one piece of information that most stands out to me is in the suicide chapter in El Don de Tu Alma. And I talked there with a woman named Carolyn, whose only child, a son, Cameron, took his own life. Right after he graduated from high school, she came home and found him. He had hung himself in their own home. We did a channeling session with a woman who channels Jesus, and we asked him about suicide and about this particular suicide. And what he shared with us is that suicide is not planned as a certainty prior to birth, but it actually is planned as a possibility or even a probability. And then what we later learn in doing the research about suicide is that literally every suicide that could have been prevented was in fact prevented. And what I mean is this: we're told by Spirit that if a suicidal person has just the slightest openness or willingness to change their mind and not take their life, Spirit knows that, and Spirit will stage an intervention, which could be almost anything. It could be a person walks by and smiles and then they feel better and they don't take their life. Or a bird flies by and distracts them. Or maybe an angel even comes into body and saves them. But the idea is that Spirit knows if the suicidal person has any openness to changing their mind, and if they do, they stage an intervention, and so the suicide never takes place. What this means is that if you have lost someone you love to suicide, there was literally nothing you could have done to prevent it. Because if it could have been prevented, Spirit would have staged the intervention. So when I work with people who have lost a loved one to suicide, I share this information with them, and I invite them, take whatever guilt or self-blame you have in regard to the suicide and put it down and step away from it, because there was literally nothing you could have done to save your loved one's life. Well, I'm working on another book now, and so there will be more messages and more information about pre-birth planning and why we plan certain experiences. It's always evolving. I think the main idea, the common thread, is one of empowerment. You know, that nobody is a victim. The universe is not punishing you with karma or bad experiences. You yourself are the powerful creator of all that you experience. Some of what you experience comes to you as a result of planning you did before you were born. Some of it comes as a result of free will decisions you make after you come into body. They may not have been part of your pre-birth plan. But in all cases, you are magnetizing or drawing to yourself the things you experience through the law of attraction. When you understand that, it pulls you out of victim consciousness and allows you to be the powerful and conscious creator of all that you experience. My understanding is that every country does have a specific karma. I have not researched what Mexico's karma is, but I do know, and we were talking just the other day about I think it was 43 students who disappeared. It's very possible that they had a pre-birth plan for this to happen, which I know is difficult to understand. But the way this works is that they may have gotten together before any of them were born and said something like the following: we would like the frequency of Mexico to be at a certain vibration by a certain point in linear time. And if it's not, we agree to give our lives in this terrible tragedy because we understand it will call people's attention to what is happening, it will help people to awaken, and there will be this outpouring of love and compassion which we hope will raise the vibration of the entire country. And now that everyone is talking about this, I think that is happening. I just like to remind people of who they really are. Again, you are so much more than the body, so much more than the personality. You are a divine being and an eternal soul, and a very courageous being, because it takes a lot of courage to plan to come to Earth. It takes even more courage to execute the plan once you're here. You've left a realm of tremendous peace and joy and love and light to be here. So honor yourself for the courage you've shown by coming into body.